I'm Stacy Evans, and today we're going to talk about photographing your artwork. First thing we need to do is think about the location. Things to consider when we're thinking about location are the amount of space around to give us enough space for your artwork, but also lighting and the camera. We'll also want to consider the potential of a neutral area, where we don't want to have anything that's very green or very red in the environment, because that might give a color cast to the piece of artwork. Today we're going to work in the PVCC painting studio. Here we have a nice neutral backdrop to work with, and we have enough space for the lighting equipment to be out to the sides. And we have a nice distance for the camera to be from the artwork, and that will prevent any type of barrel distortion that could happen with the lens. First, I'd like to talk about the lighting equipment. This lighting equipment is part of the PVCC art department. If you've taken the photography class or been trained with the lighting equipment, you can use it. Just ask one of the instructors to get it for you. With the lighting equipment, what you'll notice is a light. This is considered a mono head. What we have here are strobe lights and a continuous light. So if I move it front, you'll see two different light bulbs, one in the center and one around the edge. The controls for this light are on the side, one being the output for the strobe and the second one being the output for the modeling light, which is the continuous light. On the back is where you'll see the on-off and the modeling light on-off and a few other spaces that we'll talk about in the middle. This is the connection for a slave or the sync cord that will sync the light with the camera. Let's see. The next thing that's nice is the light stand. The light is connected to the light stand, which gives you freedom in adjusting the angle of the light. So here I can move it around, but I can also bring the light up by unscrewing some of the knobs. I can bring the light up or down, and I can move it around the room. There are reflectors that are attached to the front of the light. They can be taken on or off by simply sliding this button back and rotating the reflector in an opposite direction, and then pulled out. Now you can see this is the continuous light and this is the strobe light. I can put the reflector back on by lining up these three grooves into this area, pushing it in and then turning it to the left. No, turning it to the right. The other piece of equipment we'll be using is an umbrella. The umbrella will be used to bounce the light into. So these simply open up and open up like any umbrella. Hopefully you're not superstitious. And they slide into this area with the reflector. The umbrella, the proper way for alignment with the umbrella is to align it even with the reflector so no light spills out and around the umbrella. So I'm lining it up, and then on this side you'll see another knob that you can tighten down, and now the umbrella is in place. The next step is we want to place our artwork. So we decide, we look at our location and our wall, and depending on what type of work you have, you might want to use tacks, you might want to use tape, or there could be a nail in the back. So that's all dependent on the artwork. With this piece, we're going to tack to the edges. We don't want to puncture the piece of artwork, so we're putting two above, outside of the white frame, or to the edge of the white frame below. I'm not going through the artwork. Also, depending on the surface, you want to be cautious how you handle the artwork. So we've got 4 tacks in each corner. With some pieces, I'll work with a level, but often that can be done if we're working digitally in the post-production. Once we have the artwork in place, Then we're ready to set the lights up. We have 2 umbrellas with lights attached to a power cord. So we need to find an appropriate outlet. Close is best, so I'm going to plug this in here. This one, an extension cord came from the ceiling, so I'll plug this one here. Then I'll turn the lights on. What you'll see, this is the modeling light, so it's a warmer color. It's a tungsten-based light. This one is as well. So then we'll position the lights. Depending on the size of the piece of artwork and how high we've placed it on the wall, I like to have it about mid-level so that the brightest spot of the light will hit the center of the image. So let's say about mid-level. So I just kind of stand, eyeball it. And then I can step back and I take a look and see if the lights are in the appropriate position and if they're equal distance from the artwork. And they are not at this point. This one's a little bit farther away. And this one, so just adjusting them slightly. That looks pretty good. So now we just need to position the camera. So the camera comes in front of the artwork. And depending on what type of lens we're using will depend on how close we get to the artwork. This camera has a fixed 50mm lens. It also has a lens hood on it. And what that will do is prevent any extra light that could reflect on the lens itself. So you won't have any lens flare. That's something that you want to be careful with when we're working with lights that are to the side, that no lens flare comes in. So I'm going to position the camera. I need to raise it up. So at this point, this is a tripod. I'm positioning it on the tripod. To raise up the legs, I just hold it in the center and turn this knob, flip that knob out. Hold it to my eye so I can get a general idea where I need to be, and then tighten it down. And then I allow the other legs just to fall into place. So that gives us a starting position. And then next we have knobs on the head that we can adjust as well, just to try to square up the image in the frame. All of this can also be done in post-production, so you just need to get close. You want to get as close as you can to the subject, and the idea that you want the artwork to fill the frame so that you have the most pixels possible. So I'm going to move just a little bit closer. One thing you want to consider is that you don't want to obstruct the light at all. So you don't want to get too close so that you're blocking any light. So I'm going to be back farther. Okay. All right, so our camera's in place, the lights are in place. The next step is to measure the amount of light that is falling on the subject. In order to do that, we want to turn off any ambient room light that won't be necessary. Now that we've turned off the room light, we're ready to actually measure the amount of light that's hitting the surface of the painting. I've set my ISO on the light meter to 400. There's a button that says ISO, and then there are 2 controls on the side, up and down arrows. So ISO goes up to 400. Next, I need to select the proper mode. We are working with the continuous light today, so that ends up being the sunshine icon. There are lightning bolts, and those are for the actual strobe lights, the big flashes. So I push the mode button and go up and down. No, I push the mode button to scroll through the different lighting modes, and I choose the sunshine. even though in this situation it's not the sunshine, it's the fact that it's continuous light, not a flash. All right, and now I'll measure all four corners, trying not to block the light with my body. So I click and I look at the light reading and it says a 1/60th of a second at f2. So it's giving me the shutter speed and the aperture. I want a smaller aperture, so since it's a flat two-dimensional piece, I probably can use an f5.6. 5.6 at 1/8 of a second, 5.6 at 1/8 of a second, 5.6 at 1/8 of a second. So we have light all the way around. If it was a bigger piece, I would want to measure in the center as well, just to make sure it's lit in the center as well. 5.6 at 1/8 of a second. So those are my camera readings. Since I'm on a tripod, I'm not concerned about 1/8 of a second. So now I will go into manual mode. In this situation, we're working in manual mode. You could work with aperture priority mode as well, but manual mode is best. So I'm in the M. Now I have to get up on my tiptoes to actually set it. So 5.6. To change the shutter, I use my front knob on this particular camera. 1/8 of a second. To change the aperture, I use the back knob. 5.6 at 1/8 of a second. The next thing we want to think about is the white balance. These are tungsten-based lights. So we need the icon in the white balance that looks like the light bulb. So I push down, I find the WB, and then I rotate through to find the tungsten-based. It's okay if you use auto white balance, but you're going to have more accuracy if you change your white balance. And now we are ready to take the photograph. So I will position myself behind the camera, look through my viewfinder, make sure that I'm focused on the piece of artwork, and then take the photograph. I'm going to review it. Ooh, much too bright. To make sure everything looks okay. And it has much too bright. And so I need to see what's wrong. My ISO is set wrong. So I need to make sure my camera ISO is set correct. So now I can just position again, take my picture, review the results, and my image looks pretty good. So now, instead of just taking one exposure, I like to take 3 exposures at different aperture settings. So now I will go down one stop to f8 and make a photograph. And go up to f4.5. This gives me a variety of different images to work with in post-production and gives me the security to know that I've got a good dynamic range and that I'm not clipping out any of the highlights or the shadows when I create the file. So that's it for photographing your artwork. Once you're done, be sure to turn off your lights first. You want to make sure that the modeling lights have time to cool down. And then you put away the equipment. So thank you.